Hey everyone, Nick here with Whole Latte Love. I've got Zach with me.
Hello everyone again.
Just like water filtration, machine maintenance, super important, wouldn't you say, Zach?
Oh yeah, big time. Coming from like a commercial background, you know, I used a lot of what we call a keffiza back there. So pounds and pounds of that, what seemed like daily, utilizing pitchers. We soak kind of everything. That's mainly to get off all that coffee residue. So specifically coffee residue with that keffiza.
So Zach, this is a question that I just really want to get started with off the bat, but like, how important is cleaning and maintenance?
Oh my gosh. So both when it comes to residue that might come from water, specifically lime scale or anything, that can destroy your machine completely. And then when it comes to coffee residue and everything else that kind of accumulates after, every shot, it'll completely change the taste of your coffee over time, even through to the next day. So I think regular maintenance schedules and maybe little reminders within maybe even your phone or have the machine do it for you is largely important.
And so we're going to be covering that because keffiza actually addresses a lot of stuff, not just our group when you'd perform what we would call a back flush, but also being able to clean, say, components like your shower screen or your portafilter baskets to break down those built-up coffee oils.
Yeah, and you can kind of use maybe even your pitchers, or if you have a large glass bowl or anything, that'll be pretty necessary when it comes to really thoroughly cleaning with these products.
And then on the other half of the counter, though, we do have some super autos. So we've got our Gaggia Academia, and then we have the Jura Z10. These, a lot of people ask, right, or they think, because I know the sales team have certainly heard these questions, but with a super auto, well, do I have to clean it? Or maybe I didn't think I had to clean it. And you can see today that maintenance of these machines is actually very, very easy, but it is an essential, essential task, let's say, to keeping your machine running for as long as possible and keeping your coffee tasting its best.
Yeah, and that's usually why we get these super autos too, is because they are super easy to both brew and to clean. Most of these cleaning settings are actually right there on the front face of the machine, and some of them even guide you through that process too and set those reminders, so not relying on your phone as much, but the machine will tell you to on its own.
Yeah, Gaggia's modern machines, I think, do a really great job of that. And then, two, we've got some gaskets up here. We're going to get into that as well because I feel like the gasket is often overlooked as a sort of, very essential piece of the machine that should be getting replaced somewhat more, maybe more regularly than some people think.
Yeah, and there's some clear identifiers too of when you do need to maybe replace your gasket that we'll go through soon. And they look kind of pretty too.
So I'll tell you what, Zach, let's get started with back flushing. So just if you can explain to everybody what exactly is back flushing? How does it work? What are you doing?
So as you're pulling shots and extracting, there is a little bit of coffee that kind of gets flushed within your system.
Yeah, and actually, Kristen, so we're talking about right up in here, if you want to bring us there. So getting flushed up here, right? That's where our shower screen is?
Yep, so right through the shower screen. And the only way to really get out that residual coffee residue is to really flush that system. And the only way that we can do that, since there's technically an exit through our actual basket here, is to close off that exit so everything can kind of shoot through your valve down below.
And that's using one of these, right?
Exactly. So if you don't have any sort of extractor tool, it's simple enough to actually take off your previous basket. I like to use kind of the back side of your new tool and use one of the ears here and slowly work your way up from both sides here. Now, it can be pretty difficult when you first start getting used to this. Make sure you're not slamming your finger. It doesn't take too much pressure too, so definitely be careful when doing so.
And you may want to brace that. Obviously, you're holding it up so everyone can see, but giving yourself proper leverage too. But that is called a back flush disc or a blind filter basket, and that means blind that there are no holes in it, so the water can't penetrate through it.
Exactly. So this is completely cut off now. So there's only one way for all of the cleaning products to really go, and that's out of your system, out of your machine. So as you can see at this time, I can either utilize this basket or, I could even soak some of these products within Kefisa as well. You know, about 10 to 20 minutes soaking in hot water, and about a quarter size of Kefisa can actually get rid of all that coffee residue. Be careful though when you do have any wooden components or anything. You don't really want to soak that within Kefisa.
You want to avoid getting that in there. And so, you know, just taking off, and maybe we can find a different portafilter to show, but when you use your backflush disc and you actually insert it, that's a great opportunity for you to inspect the basket that you had in your portafilter, as well as the inside of the portafilter too, because it's very obvious when there's coffee oils in there that you need to do something about.
Oh yeah, so from there you can also check out your shower screen as well. You can even unscrew your shower screen, which kind of varies on what it looks like from machine to machine and what you need to do, but ensuring that you don't strip any of your screws while doing so, and you can soak those accordingly as well within this Kefisa during this time.
And the important thing to note too, right, is you may get under here and wipe out your shower screen every time you brew. There could still be oil that builds up on the opposite side of it that you don't see. So especially if you're going to be replacing your gasket on your E61 machine, and it's a little simpler on other machines like the Gadget Classic, for example, you're going to want to check periodically to see that you don't have buildup on there, because contrary to what some people may believe, you do not want that accumulation of old coffee oil on any of your stuff. So what's that going to do flavor-wise?
It's going to completely change that flavor. Kind of no matter what you would do, you'd get kind of like that bitter over-extracted hint to your coffee every single time. It will taste a little stale throughout that. So that could be a clear sign that, hey, I need to do a backflush. I'm getting this weird note that I haven't gotten before. All of a sudden, it kind of tasted a little old and stale there. So when using this Kefisa, this comes as a powder with an Ernex. And all I'm going to do is just do a little bit of a dime size, quarter size.
Yeah, it's only a couple grams, maybe like 2 grams. Oh,
a little too much
a little
there.
bit more. Yeah, and you definitely don't want to overdo it with the Kefisa, because the stuff does foam up, and it can, you know, obviously make a little bit of a mess there. But yeah, if you have a scale at home, you can measure it too. Like I said, about maybe 2 or 3 grams. And the water, when you start extracting or faux extracting, is going to activate that cleaner, and it's going to produce a lot of foam.
Exactly. So this is hot water sort of activated. So if you're using cold water and you start soaking everything, this might actually stay as a solid. So ensure that you're maybe utilizing your boiler or getting some hot water, boiling off some hot water to start soaking any of those products that you have. And in commercial, we did this every single night. You don't necessarily have to do this every night.
So that's a question, right? So commercial, you're doing it every single night because you're making dozens, maybe hundreds of shots a day. So for the average home user, what would you recommend just as a good rule of thumb for how frequently to be backflushing?
I would say every couple weeks, or maybe every time you interchange to a new coffee bag, depending on like what size coffee, especially if you're pulling 1 to 2 shots a day there. You couldn't push it out to like 2 weeks or so. Now, if you're using a pretty dark roast, something pretty oily that really might collect a lot of those coffee oils throughout your system, maybe start looking at doing that a little more often. So
So Zach, you've plugged that in. You've got your backflush disc in there. You've got your Kefisa. So basically, lock it in. We're going to need a bigger cup probably underneath, right? Or actually, no.
We'll probably just drip right into the tray.
Yeah.
Yep.
So probably empty your drip tray out before you perform this little.
Exactly, because all of it's going to come straight out this valve at the bottom. So I like to do this in a few increments during this. So there's some crazier machines out there that even have auto flush features.
That's right.
But
most ProfTech Move is one that has that now.
Exactly. So something like this, where it's just a traditional style E61, this can be a backflushable machine, unlike there's a few that we can't utilize this, which we'll talk about shortly here. I'm going to just go ahead and do a couple seconds interval and then turning it off as well. So my personal favorite is to go 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off, 5 times. So that's again my interval of things, but as long as you're doing this in a good consistency, some people do 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off a couple times. Or even more so.
I do want to say that on machines like the Synchronica AMG that we have here, other products from ECM ProfTech, that if you're using the programmable backflush cycle, the required amount of time for a backflush is a little bit longer, actually. I think
Correct.
that's closer to 10, 15 seconds. And that's just if you're using the machine's programmed mode for it to count one of those flush cycles.
Yep. So I find that throughout my cycle that I do see a lot of that coffee residue starting to dissipate, and then also then back flushing with just water, no Kafiza afterwards, to then flush out any of that residual cleaner. So we're going to go ahead and try that right now as Nick's looking to possibly answer some questions if you have any down
I'm just
below.
seeing from Ken Roman, I have a Bizarre Unica, and after done brewing, I do 2 brews without coffee in the basket without holes, as I am looking for no grinds in the water and portafilter. I get what you're saying. So you're trying to basically make sure after you're done brewing and you're running the pump that you're not getting any more coffee that's flowing, say, out of the shower that might still be up there in your water. So you put the backflush disc back in. So I think Brian Tucker, our service manager, he's talked about that. He calls it water backflushing, which is basically just backflushing but without using cleaner, but just using water instead.
Yep. Which I usually do right after this sort of backflush as well. I'll start backflushing with just water, ensure that I don't see any cleaner or residual grounds of anything afterwards. It's a good route to go, honestly.
I mean, I will say, Ken, I don't use my backflush disc, but on machines that I have, when I want to make sure everything's clean, I definitely do the same thing. Typically take an empty cup, run the water into it so I can see if there's still grounds in there, maybe grab a paper towel, just wipe everything down, run a few more times until it runs clear. Backflushing is another way that you could do it as well. I think maybe more thorough, but obviously it involves a little bit more work. So you could probably see if just running the pump and wiping it down would give you the same thing, but totally understand where you'd want to just get any remaining grinds out of there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there are a couple other ways that you can utilize certain tools to bypass that as well. Specifically, like one of the puck screens as well. That kind of keeps a lot of the residual coffee out of that. So if that is a concern between shots, maybe utilizing a puck screen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're going to use a puck screen too, we've got one from E&B Lab that I really like. It's got a magnet that comes with it. One of my biggest problems with puck screens, and this is just a personal gripe, is just that one of my favorite things about Espresso is just the cathartic, knocking of the puck out. I feel like that's really nice, but then it adds the extra step of then having to go take the metal out, or you have to flip it out first and then knock it out. To me, it just kind of, it's a really tidy process, and I just feel like it's that extra step that I'm just not too keen on.
Definitely. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get into our first backflush here on the Synchronica. So again, I'm going
So take us in there.
I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, activating the pump for about 5 seconds. And turning that off. You'll see a lot of that will actually shoot out that bottom valve here. And throw that back on. And again, we're going to continue doing this a couple times. A lot of the times you will see a good amount of coffee residual coming out of that valve as well. I'm coming out pretty nice and clear. This is a brand new AMG here.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing too much residual from what we've had going previously here. In fact, I'll just do it one more time here for good measure.
But I mean, seeing is believing, right? So obviously on this machine, to your point, very clean. We have used this machine for our streams, but other than that, it was brand new. You might be amazed by how brown the foam and the water is that you're dispensing when you're cleaning your machine, especially if you haven't done it and you've waited, a few months, etc. So,
and as we
kind of looks like you said, sometimes you burn your hand. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of my whole thing with the puck screen. So I really like the one from E&B Lab. It's got a photo etched membrane, similar to one that they use in one of their premium baskets, and then it has a little magnet. It looks like a chest pawn. You just stick it on, lift it off, works perfectly.
All right, now as we're going pretty clear now, as I'm flushing just water at this point, we're looking just about done with our backflush here.
And actually, too, Kristen, if you want to take us up just a little bit, I'll have us zoom right in on the brew pressure gauge, because I want to mention, while you've got your backflush disc in, something else that you can check is just if you're curious about your pressure in your machine, you'll be able to see where you're set for your OPV. So we're right around just a little over 9 bar, it looks like there, so we're perfect with that backflush disc in. That's just something, especially if you ever have a machine where you can update or change the position of the OPV, you can use your backflush disc because there's no water that can pass through to see exactly where that valve is being set, which is another little handy thing that you can do there.
Yeah, exactly. So from there, you can kind of adjust some things accordingly. But yeah, we're looking for right about 9 to 10 bars of pressure.
Yeah. And so AS is asking, is it possible to clean your machine too often? I mean, I'd say it might be.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Between every use is a little excessive. Might get a little expensive over time as well. And a lot of that cleaning product, I don't know if I would want it sitting in my machine after every use, too.
That's true,
It would take a lot of water to really flush that out.
Just to get rid of all of it, I think. And one of the other things, too, especially with backflushing, if you've never done it before, or if you've been waiting, can really make that lever on these 61 machines very squeaky. So there's a natural sort of lubrication that builds up as you brew with the machine. And when you clean it, you might hear it squeaking for the first, day or so as you're going through because you've just stripped all that out. That's totally normal, keep in mind, but if you were cleaning it like all the time with this cleaner, you'd be hearing it squeaking. I mean, it's literally squeaky clean, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be hearing that a lot. So, that's a great question, though. Yeah, I would say really use your eyes, especially when you're back flushing. Take a look at your basket, take a look at your portafilter, see, look and check, okay, hey, there's buildup in here, and think about the places that you can't see. So if you're building up on your portafilter, you're probably also going to be building up behind your shower screen as well. You might want to pop that out and then give that a good soak in some of that keffiza as well.
All right, so this is my favorite tool over here, but we also have some other tools around here as well. So I think continuing on with kind of the semi-autos of things, we also like to use Rinza as
That's
well.
right.
So Rinza is something that we'll actually utilize by using one of our pitchers, some water, and we'll actually go ahead and steam this process. So the tabs actually come into a pre-measured size as well.
So if you've shopped with us for a while, just a quick note, Rinza used to be in liquid. It is now in a tablet that you simply make a solution with water, and it does the exact same thing.
So again, that solution can be created with hot water. You can steam through it, so this will kind of...
Bring that down just a little bit there, Zach, for our fans at
There
home.
we go.
Perfect.
All right. Oh, yep, I should probably turn this so you can see what we're using there. All right, look at that. Perfect. So Rinza, also made by Ernix over here. So this is a common use also within commercial, and you should also utilize this at home, especially if you're a milk-based drinker, because a lot of that milk can actually really get back-flushed within that steam wand. So you really want to flush that out. So any residual milk within there, it's good to flush out. Go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, too, something that's really nice is on certain machines they have a no-burn steam wand, and I think a lot of people attribute that to, oh, it's no burn, I won't burn myself, but on the other hand, too, it's really useful to keep the steam wand clean because the surface stays cooler and that milk doesn't burn on as quickly, right? So if you are using a machine that's not a no-burn wand and you find that you do have milk building up on it and you're having a tough time getting that off, that's what these tablets are for because they're specially formulated to remove milk residue, and so you can soak maybe the steam tip or the entire wand by just positioning your pitcher on your drip tray to soften all that stuff up so that it comes off more easily.
Yeah, oftentimes you could even just leave it over there overnight is what we used to do within coffee shops, is create that solution using hot water, let it soak there, and it's so much easier to really wipe off that excess or milk residual that might be left over on that wand.
Yeah. And so in the realm of the steam boiler, of the service boilers, Zach, I think something that people probably aren't talking about enough is cycling the water in your boiler, correct?
Correct, yeah. So some of that water inside there, I mean, if you don't really use your machine that often, it can get kind of old. It sits there for a little while, right?
Sure. Well, so just to be clear, too, what we're talking about, right? Your brew boiler, that's full of water that's being used to brew your espresso. You're running your pump, water is leaving the boiler, new water is replacing it, right? On your steam boiler, though, not all your water is turned into steam. You have steam on the top half of the boiler, you have water on the bottom half. So if you've ever seen how a heat exchanger or a dual boiler machine is plumbed, you'll note that for the taps, the steam tap is coming from a tube on the top of the boiler. the hot water tap, that's coming from the bottom. Well, if you're only ever steaming, you may have water that sits in the bottom of that boiler for a really long time that doesn't get out, and that can get kind of nasty.
Definitely. So how do we really combat that, Nick? There's a couple different ways, right?
I mean, if you're me, you just make an Americano every single day, and then you're, getting new water
good to
all
go.
the time. But otherwise, yeah, you could certainly be flushing that water out using that hot water arm.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I think another part of it too is if, let's say for example, you've got a nice bowl like this, and you want to mix up a solution of some Cafiza to soak some of your components, and you're dispensing that water, same thing, right? You want to be evacuating that water, either through your everyday use, right? So if you do make a lot of Americanos, if you are using your machine to help with your maintenance, you might be cycling that water more frequently than other people. If you don't, though, then you're going to want to make sure that you make it a deliberate, process for you to go in and every now and then drain that water out from the bottom. Taking the steam off the top is not necessarily going to do it because you still have that water down below.
Yeah, so I mean, I would just mix it in with when you're soaking everything else. Make sure you're filling that pot up.
Sure. So make yourself a checklist, right? And then basically, hey, do I need to do the portafilter this time around? Is my basket looking good? The shower screen. So it looks like we've got Shrun Yacob. Hi, guys. Shrun, welcome. Glad to have you with us. So, Zach, let's talk about gaskets.
Yeah, so I think in the realm of semi-autos over here, there is something that we have to look at, replacing every 6 months or so.
Sure.
Really depends on your specific use, how much you're really heating up your machine, because heat and this sort of rubber material over time hardens.
Yes, so if you've got a junk drawer, say maybe, or an odds and ends drawer, let's say. I feel like most people have them. You find an old rubber band that might be in there, and it crumbles in your fingertips. Well, these aren't going to do quite that, but this is a silicone material. Some gaskets are made out of rubber. They do dry out over time, and they get cracked, right? So right now, this is a new one, and it's nice and pliable. So that's going to help us create a good seal inside the basket, or inside the group, because this is sitting up top. We're locking our portafilter in underneath it, and then this is keeping any water from escaping out. Oh, there we go. Yeah, escaping out, and it directs it straight down through the center instead.
Now, there's a clear sign that you can actually tell that you need to replace your gasket, and it actually has to do with your portafilter and the position that you find it at. So most portafilters will kind of clock to a pretty center and straight sort of position, maybe a little bit before that. But as your gasket begins to wear down and maybe harden, this will actually start moving at that lock position further and further. So if your portafilter right now is clocked all the way maybe over to the right, that's a clear sign that you may need to replace that gasket. It might be a little hard in order for it to produce that scale or that seal.
And so a lot of people, I think, get fixated on, obviously, from an aesthetic standpoint, 6 o'clock is the most pleasing, but a fresh gasket, it may be closer to 5, or I'm sorry, in this case, 7. And then as you continue turning, you're getting further and further over. And you have to do that to compensate for the fact that you don't have a proper seal. So I do see D. Bahi asking about no flow through the group on a Gaja Classic E24. I would say we've got our tech support team available for you if you want to reach out to them. We do offer a service. It's live troubleshooting where you can actually get a tech live on video with you to observe your issue and help you address it in real time. I would say reach out to them. They're incredibly talented and they can get you taken care of. It looks like Shrun. I always face the issue. Coffee powder comes in the espresso shot, so please, I will backflush my machine after 15 espresso shots, but I also wash the shower screen and portafilter. So you're talking about, it looks like getting, and I've seen this as well, getting some coffee particulate in your shot, actually making its way through the basket and getting into the cup. Zach, any thoughts on that?
So there is a simple way to kind of get rid of that, and a lot of those coffee particles actually have to do with immediate solubles. So there's a thing called fines migration that can actually happen if you ramp up too quickly in your first initial shot. A lot of those fines will actually shoot out the bottom of your basket. Now, if you utilize something like a pre-saturation or pre-infusion where you're lightly ramping up to it, that can get rid of it. Now, another way is to actually grind a little bit coarser and maybe increase your tamp pressure as well.
You're talking about preventing fines migration, keeping those small soluble bits from kind of just making
shooting right out. Yeah. Yep. So they can also clog those bottom pores of your basket as well. So that can be another.
Well, that's the
clear
thing,
sign
right?
of
Those
that.
pores are small, but some coffee particles are actually even smaller. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So these grinders can produce fines that are, below 250 microns. So definitely good enough to fit through these small little holes.
That's right. You're getting caffeinated on a nearly atomic level.
Yes, definitely. So I think they're almost kind of tasty, but.
Well, to each his own, right?
Yep,
So, Zach, what are some consequences of not changing that gasket out?
So you'll actually see a lot of leaking that you would almost maybe confuse as like channeling or something like that, but you'll see a lot of water actually shoot out the sides of your gasket and maybe even round out around your portafilter.
Yep.
So you'll see a lot of clear water around it. So that's going to be another clear sign that it might have hardened. You may still bring it to the same point, but your gasket might have hardened. And another way to kind of prevent that too is, in order to create the seal with these new silicone gaskets, you don't really have to crank on your portafilter as hard. You just have to slightly put it on and go ahead and try it too, and you'll see that it makes a seal on its own. The more you're really cranking that on, and especially you're keeping on that portafilter and keeping it hot, and it's super cranked on, the faster that's going to harden out. So
I mean, in the shop, Zach, how frequently were you changing out gaskets?
in the shop, I would go about 6 months or so. So we can last a good while, but we're pretty regimented with that too. So we kind of got ahead of the game before it really started hardening. So it started clocking a little bit further, and then we knew.
And part of that's going to come down to as well, do you have your machine on a timer? Are you powering it off so the gasket's not basically getting cooked inside the group? Because the group, as we all know, very hot.
Yes.
It has a sticker that says, caution, hot surface. Well, we have a gasket inside there that's baking essentially the entire time. The longer you have that on, the longer that gasket is basically getting cooked and drying out.
Yep. And with all of these semi-autos, we actually have different size gaskets as well. So if you have any questions about what size gasket fits your machine, we have a full sales floor out there ready and willing to help. They know exactly what gasket you need for your machine.
And so, I think the question we get the most, obviously, is about orange versus yellow. Now, both of these gaskets have the same diameter. It's just the thickness is slightly different. So orange, I believe, is 8 millimeters. Yellow is 8.5, and really that's just going to be how far you can turn. So if you've got a new machine, orange is definitely the way to go. And if you have, a machine that's many years old and you've just been locking it in over and over and over and over again, maybe you've worn out a little bit of that metal in there, both on the inside tracks of the group or on your portafilter, you might need just a little bit more space from a yellow gasket and get that in there.
And again, if you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out. We're around. We also do, coffee casts and those barista assists as well to help identify if you're having any issues with that.
Yeah, it's wild sometimes. That's how I discovered aerial tamping was a coffee cast. So we had a customer who was having trouble getting consistency with one of his shots, and he thought, hey, maybe there's something going on with the grinder. And when I watched, I said, I think if we can correct your tamping, you're going to find a world of difference with your extractions. And, just in 15 minutes, he was going from, hey, this isn't so good, to, wow, these shots are really tasting great. And I think sometimes just getting that perspective can really help when it comes to just improving your results at home.
Definitely. Well, with that, I feel like that just about covers our semi-autos at this point. So maybe we can bring it on over to some supers.
Yeah, I think at home you're ready to learn how to become super auto superheroes, because super automatic machines, like I said, a lot of people wonder, do you have to clean them? And the truth of the matter is yes, but it's really not too difficult. So the Gaja Academia, to me, I think it got bored of listening to us talk. It took a little nap while we were chatting about our semis there. But the Gaja Academia, and I have the Jura Z10 behind me as well. These are two machines, super autos, that I think have really helped make the process of maintenance that much easier. And so when it comes to super autos, and we're starting with Gaja, there's just a few things that you got to remember to do. So first of all, this machine is brewing your coffee for you. So just like the portafilter in the brew group on a semi-automatic machine, you have components in here that are going to collect coffee, they're going to collect oils, and you want to clean them as well. So in a super automatic, that component, and our Academia is perfect for demonstrating this, is called the brew group. So yeah, Kristen, let me just open that door slightly more for you. And the brew group is located on the inside of the machine, and it has a few different components. So first of all, it's located directly above or below, your grinder and our bypass chute. So there's a little tube right here that falls directly into the group itself. So you either load your coffee in through here or the grinder fills it, right? So there's a screen in here, a shower screen, just like you'd have in a traditional semi-automatic machine. And there's also a gasket to create a seal, right? So inside on the inner track of our group, we have a little red O-ring, okay? So this is not the position that the group is always in. When it's brewing, you'll see that there's a little yellow spot down here. That turns with a little gear and it slides these assemblies into place. And so inside the brewing chamber, that's where our coffee goes. And let me see if I can show you as well. Okay, I'm turning it just so. So there's the shower screen, not super well lit, but you can see the little screw there. And then there's this red O-ring. So that O-ring is just like the gasket inside your brew group. So Zach, one thing you mentioned, your gasket's getting too old, you're gonna start to see water leaking around the outsides of your portafilter. Well, same thing can happen if you have an older gasket in your brew group. So Gaja sells service kits for these brew groups that will basically include new O-rings for you to put. Because if you don't, and I've said this a million times, but it's always worth repeating, the machine actually dispenses water on the inside as well as into the drip tray up front. That's why for most machines, this one's on a hinge of course, your drip tray runs the full depth of the machine. Well, you'll start to see your shots getting more watery, not pressurized, they're weaker, and you'll start to have your drip tray filling up a lot more frequently. So replacing that little O-ring, super important. Now, I'm going to turn that around, and then, Kristen, if you want to go, yeah, there we go. You'll notice Gaja actually did the thinking for you. So on the brew group itself, it has its own little reminders for you. So there's our little calendar, 7 days. That's once a week. Take the group out. This thing is waterproof. You need to rinse it in your sink. Get all the coffee and the grounds and the oils off of it that you can just by rinsing it. Below that, you'll see every 500 cups, you're going to want to clean the group and you're going to want to re-lubricate it as well. So each of these machines is going to come with a tube of group lubricant. There are sliding tracks inside this that will grind on each other. So you want to just have a little bit of food-safe lubricant in there. It allows them to slide and position themselves. Every single time that you brew, these components are sliding and moving into position. That's why that brew group lubricant is so important. Now, the coffee clean tablets, right? That's like your backflushing. So just like in your portafilter or your portafilter baskets, coffee oils are going to build up on the inside of your group, on the inside of your shower screen, and they also are going to build up on your spouts coming out of your machine, right? So Zach just showed you how to backflush, and that was not too difficult, but obviously it required a little bit of doing. I'm going to show you on our Gaja Academia here just how simple it is to clean the brew group. So I'll put that back in, and there we go.
Should we have like a contest of who can do it
Oh,
faster?
who can do it fastest? Yeah. You know, that's giving me flashbacks. I think one of our live streams maybe a few years ago I was on with Mark. He was unboxing an Academia, I was unboxing a Gaja Classic, and it was who could get it unboxed and on and frothing first. So that was a little wild. So,
Who won that?
you know, I think it was close.
It was close.
Okay, it was close. But it was me.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Really?
Mark's back there shaking his head.
If we go in though, we have a button dedicated just to cleaning and settings. And so on all of Gaja's new machines from their modern assortment, so that includes the Cadorna, the Magenta, and the Academia, you have a dedicated menu just for cleaning. And so for me, for a Super Auto, that makes it so easy. So we'll click on cleaning here, and you'll see that we've got 4 options. So Kristen, I'll get my hand out of the way if you want to just get that pulled up here on the screen. So
Wonderful.
we have Brew Group Clean. I wonder which one that's for, right? Descaling, Quick Milk Clean, and then Deep Milk Clean. So in this case, we're going to hit Brew Group Clean. And now it's saying, okay, to activate this process, press the button. So I'll grab a pitcher. May need a slightly bigger one, but we'll see. We'll live on the edge. And
We
we'll
got
just
another
start. So fill and insert the water tank. We did fill right before this segment, so we're looking good there. It's just to make sure you have enough water. And now, put a cleaning tablet in the pre-ground coffee compartment. So what's really nice is it's walking you through every single step. We put that in, put a container under the spout while I'm already good there. And then it's just going to run through the Brew Group cleaning cycle, and that's it. And so the machine does a great job of just making sure you know all the steps in order to actually perform this procedure. And so we can see cloudy water coming out of the spouts, just like when we were backflushing on our Synchronica over there. Very similar stuff being used, right? So like Ernex makes a Cafiza, for example, for super autos that's formulated with basically the exact same components, just in a tablet for you to drop into your machine.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but that does seem pretty easy. So
yeah. And so there's going to be a bit of a pause, right? It's going to want to give the cleaner time to soak in, to break down.
It's kind of like what we were doing over here as well.
Exactly. That delay is part of it, and then it's going to run again. It is not uncommon, and this is not just with Gaja, but also with Jura, because they have their own tablets, to maybe see a small residue of the tablet left over inside the machine's dreg drawer. And if you're concerned about that, I can show you how on the Gajas you can do what's called pulling a blank shot, where you basically just run water through the group. Now on the Jura machines, you actually can't run a blank shot. So what you'd probably want to do there is just brew a few coffees and then also make sure that you've removed and rinsed out the dreg drawer. So the thing with the Gajas is Gaja espresso machines allow you to remove that brew group, and that's something that's part of just normal maintenance. On a Jura espresso machine, you actually cannot remove the brew group, and so you do need to regularly use those cleaning tablets if you want to make sure that everything on the inside is nice and tidy. So, I mean, pretty straightforward. I think I'll wake up our friend, the Z10, as well.
All right, and with Juras moving forward, this is a pretty similar thing that you'll find through a couple of different Juras. Is that correct?
Yes. So with the Juras, they include their own cleaning tablets that come with the machine. They also include their own milk system cleaner. So Gaja does have a Brew Group cleaning tablet. They have a Brew Group service kit. They have a decalcifier. Jura has all of their own proprietary stuff, ranging from cleaning tablets. So it's 2024, so we went from 2 phases to 3 phases of cleaning now. So these are 3-phase tablets.
Wow.
We have just like the Rinza, these are calibrated milk cleaner. So this creates a solution. And so the Jura machines with frothers actually include a little caddy. I'll bring that over. So if you want to stay right there, Kristen, I'll let people see what I'm talking about. But it's a milk cleaning caddy, and this connects to the milk circuit on the machine. So you basically put some of the cleaner in one section, water's dispensed into it, siphoned up through a tube, and then dispensed right back out. So very straightforward, very easy to do. If you watched our water filtration segment, you'll know that Jura prefers that you use their water filters, but they also have these enormous descaling tablets that you can use as well. So
Almost like a hot tub.
almost like a hot tub. I'm partial to Gaja because their descaler is a liquid, meaning you just pour this into the water and you're good to go. With the Jura tablets, you do have to make sure that they're fully dissolved into the water before you can run the cycle. And so it just takes a lot of stirring, essentially. But otherwise, you're good. We're still just running here on the Brew Group Clean. I don't know if we have any questions, but there's a little foam that's building up on the top of this. I don't know if you can see it, Zach. And what I'll do is I'll pour that into our bowl here just so that people can kind of see the color on that water to see, that we're getting some of those coffee oils out. If you are keeping your machine clean, it will not be as pronounced, but if it's been a while, you may, like I said, you might be shocked with what you see there.
Yep.
So just want to talk about with Gaja as well on their carafe-based machines. So like the Academia, the Gaja Cadorna Prestige, the Magenta Prestige. They have a quick milk clean function, and that's just going to run water through the frother to rinse it. They also have a deep milk clean, and so that expects that you would use a solution like Ernex Rinza here, and you would fill up the carafe with that and have it pull through to actually run the cleaner through the carafe.
Now, how often would you actually suggest using a deep clean rather than the other?
So that's an interesting question. With the Gaja, I would say you can see all the components of the frother. You can rinse them. If you're very diligent about it and you rinse things off, you can keep things fairly clean without having to do a deep clean. But I would say, you know, if you've been making milk drinks pretty consistently, I would wait, you know, no longer than maybe like 3 or 4 weeks, right? If you really want to make sure that you keep everything as clean as possible. Like I said, rinsing is certainly going to help. And there we are, we're all done. So we are just at the top of this.
And we'll see just how dirty this might be.
So you got a little bit of a brown tinge to that, really not too bad.
No.
But
no.
that was in your machine, that would be in your cup, right? And so you want to make sure that you're rinsing the machine using the cleaning products, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just like with the back flushing. So it's a little unsightly, so we'll get that out of here for us. But
yeah, and again, we haven't used this particular Academia too many times too, so it can definitely sit with that residual.
But if you want to get right up here too, Kristen, right close on the screen, you're going to need to get a little closer than that, but there's a small little icon right here in the top left corner. That's going to alert you on the Academia when it's time to run that brew group cleaning cycle. And so I know we're kind of getting close. We've got a pretty exciting segment coming up. So for the Jura, we're going to do that real quick.
Since it is a pretty quick process
so
in
it's
general.
Gonna be right up in here, right? So you have an alert for your brew group cleaning. You also have an alert for when it's time to descale. And now we'll move on just to the Juras, because I think that having sort of seen the process with the Gaja, you get the idea. Everything's automated, but Jura uses a system that they refer to as, oh, there we go, the Jura cockpit, okay? And the Jura cockpit is basically, it puts you at the heart of all of the machine's alerts, and it's going to tell you, okay, what needs my attention? So get out of the way there. And by pressing the rotary switch on our Z10, if we want to jump to that, that's going to bring us into the cockpit. And you can see we have an alert that says clean the milk system, because I was making milk drinks on this machine last night. And by pressing this alert, it's going to say, okay, do you want to start this cycle right now? And everything that you need to do with the machine is guided right through that menu. Now, if you ever press just the water droplets in general, you can see all the different maintenance procedures that you could perform just like you could with the Gaja. So we have cleaning the milk system, cleaning the group, rinsing, we've got cleaning the water filter or changing it, and descaling. And so just like with the Academia, on the Jura machines, they will guide you through the process, and it just means use those proprietary cleaners, and then the machine will basically guide you through how to take care of the rest.
You know, that was way more simple than I thought it would be. You know, I haven't spent too much time behind supers. I'm usually the semi guy and the commercial guy, but I've cleaned them a few times, and you know, it's pretty similar between the two machines. It's really easy.
And you know, basic stuff too, but empty your drip tray, and then when the machine is full of spent coffee pucks, you'll be alerted, but empty those out as well. It's just, if you think about it, like imagine if you never emptied your portafilter and you had 15 portafilters that you needed to knock out. There's a drag drawer inside your machine that builds up over time. Just toss it into the garbage, give it a quick rinse, and you're generally pretty good to go.
And with that, following these procedures, that's the general gist of how to keep these machines clean between supers and semi-autos.